Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much. Welcome to this Chicago Wilderness Alliance event. I'm Suzanne Malec-McKenna, and I'm thrilled to be here to participate in what I hope you'll find to be a thought-provoking, entertaining, dare I say it, fun, and definitely action-oriented discussion tonight. 325 members strong, the Chicago Wilderness Alliance came together with an understanding that collaborative, coordinated, leveraged efforts will more expediently further our goals. Those goals are to preserve, improve, and expand our region's natural resources. So many members, so much wonderful things that are happening, and you'll hear some of that tonight. As nature is adaptive, so must we be in order to make our region as resilient as possible. Of course, those of you who know Chicago Wilderness think of us as a context of caring for region's biodiversity. And that's true. It is the major role upon which we've worked since we came together in 1996, and we've achieved much. If you look at biodiversity, you look at biological diversity, diversity of locations, diversity of species, actions, diversity of people, which is a lot of what George is going to be talking about tonight, not just diversity of people, but opinions, and how those all interlink into the kind of climate action that we think is taking place and can take place in a much more aggressive way. We are all one ecosystem, and as such, we need to think and act in that way. That's why we're here tonight. After I share with you some regional context tonight, you will hear from George Marshall as he engages us in how we can best engage everybody else, and talk about climate change and mitigation and adaptation efforts that we need to and we can undertake. Following George, you'll hear from this evening's regional thought leaders. We have Dean Fisher with West Monroe Partners and David St. Pierre of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. Really? Can't you shorten that a little bit? Take off Greater Chicago or something. Anyway, they're going to be here too, as we all consider the issues, the options, the actions we can undertake individually and collectively. So let's discuss the region's challenges briefly and the opportunities that Chicago Wilderness Alliance faces in the climate context. We're going to frame the region for a moment. We got to scope up, we got to scope down. People who've been talking to me about this, Aaron and Joyce and a lot of other folks, and Rebecca and Abigail and Doug, and you're going to hear your words. Sorry, but that shows that I listen to you, which is what George is going to talk about. But we need to look at what's going on across the world. And we know there's issues with globally significant biodiversity, which, by the way, we have here in the Chicago Wilderness region. And our region, go back one, please. Our region touches more than 10 million people, 4 states, 38 counties, and 500 municipalities. This is a big region, and there's a lot of great things going on. Next slide. So, what do we know about climate? We know, according to a lot of great forecasts from wonderful science like Catherine Hayhoe and Don Wibbles, that we're going to have a lot more extremes. We're going to have more rain when we don't need it, less when we do. We know our temperatures are going to rise, and we know at the lowest based emission scenario, we're going to see at least 30 90-plus degree days and 8 100-plus degree days. So we know where we are, we know what's coming, and we need to prepare for it. So today's conversation is really going to be about adaptation and a resilient region. There's a lot that we are all doing and will continue to do for mitigation, but I want to zone in on adaptation and resiliency. Next slide. So our friend Abigail said this. I don't need to read it for you. But we know we need to act in order to allow our natural areas to work in the best way they can. I say hardworking landscapes. And we need to put service to them. And this is where we need to do it. So this is what's called our green infrastructure vision. This is where Chicago Wilderness is based. This is our land. This is where the action needs to happen. 545,000 acres have been preserved as open space, about 347,000 of which are natural areas. We have the potential for upwards of 1.4 million acres or more that can be part of this network. Will it all be publicly open space, public open space? No way. Unless, no, I'm not even going to say unless. It's not going to happen. But there's a lot of private property and therefore a lot of partners that can be part of this. Landowners, residential, farm, commercial, corporate, industrial. There's a lot that can be done on lands across our region, and we need to figure out how to bring that together. So we're going to start by talking about birds. So National Audubon. So our friend Rebecca Sanders here, who's the new head of Audubon Chicago region, totally teased me in August by telling me this great data was going to come out September 9th from National Audubon that tells us about climate impacts on birds. So how it impacts their climatic regions. So we thought we'd focus on two tonight. The bobolink is one. First of all, we know that birds are well-known barometers. Something wrong with the birds? What else is going on in the region? How do we take a look at that, and what do we need to do? So here is the bobolink's climactic range. Isn't this cool? Everybody can go, ooh, ah. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. But so you can see over the next 70 years what's going to happen. We need to prepare for that. We need to understand what kind of actions we can undertake to make the best home possible when the bobolinks are here. If they go north and there's nothing to go to, then we got a problem. We want to make sure that when they're here, they've got the best. Prairies are what bobolinks need, grasslands. And Audubon Chicago region, Fish and Wildlife Service, and many other partners are working on an effort to expand our grassland assemblages. Great Chicago wilderness example, Medewan National Tallgrass Prairie was the Joliet Arsenal. It's now 19,000 acres of preserved open space, grasslands. Thanks to Open Lands, the U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and probably a lot of other organizations. If you want to raise your hands, we'll acknowledge you. Yay, whoever you are, thank you, well done. So the bottom line, it's a great partnership. We've done great work. We have a lot more work to do, but we have a base to demonstrate success that we can undertake. Next slide. Now let's talk about woodland birds. So this is the yellow-throated vireo, which I knew nothing about until Doug Stotts gave me a quick education, Doug from the Field Museum. And we know that this is a woodland bird, and it does really well when the tree population does well. And if the tree population expands, the bird population expands. This is its range. Also, isn't this cool? This animation's so cool. They have how many birds showing this? How many birds are under this animation throughout? 317 birds, if you go online, where you can see their climactic ranges. And some people might say, ouch, we have to say possibility. We see those birds come through our region. What can we do to make the best possible habitat for them? So we know, first of all, that there's an economic implication of birding as an example, and Fish and Wildlife show us that right there. So Dean, David, keep that in mind. There is money in all of this, not only in the implications of what we do on the ground, the jobs that are created, et cetera, but also the overall economic benefit. And it's pretty. Isn't that just a pretty slide? I think that's why we put it just beautiful. Who goes birding? Who carries I know, wait, Justin, you carry those big scope things. And they're neat. Trees. Okay, trees. So we talked about birds. Now we're going to talk about trees. We're working on a big grassland bird assemblage. We need to really focus on our tree species as well. Why do we care about trees? Well, they have a lot of value. So this is the regional forest summary that the Morton Arboretum did in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service. And I don't need to read it to you, but you can see some big dollars. So everything from carbon storage to pollution removal, building energy reduction, and I love that big Zowie number at the bottom, compensatory value. If they weren't here, what would it cost to replace the value, to replace the work that trees are doing in our region? And by the way, there's 157 million of those trees just in the 7-county region alone. So these are the things trees do. We learned it in 4th grade, maybe 5th grade, somewhere around there. We probably learned it again in biology or horticulture in college. But these are hard-working landscape investments. They're the best investment we can make in our landscape. Maybe I'm a little biased, but that's okay. You can see all the things that they do. So not only are they good for habitat, they have a tremendously important base responsibility in supporting what we do in our environment, in our region. So this is what we need to know about oaks, however. Morton Arboretum, Lake County Forest Preserve, and McHenry County Conservation District kind of led this whole conversation to look at an oak recovery plan. And so when you look at this map, what we learn is 17% of our original oak ecosystem remains. Okay, that's sad. There were 100, am I going to get this right? 170,000. So there were 1 million acres of oaks in this region, and now we have 170,000. That sounds great. It is actually a great number, 170,000. But they're not all in public open space, needless to say. There's assemblages that aren't connected, and we really need to look at our oak population and what we can do for it. So here's an example. So this is actually on Morton Arboretum property into the residential property to the edge. So in 1939, we had much larger assemblages or parcels of land. In 2010, you can see what we have now, including 0 1,000-acre assemblages. And Jim was going to tell me today, but didn't get back to me, how many of those we want. 6? Really? Go, Jim. So Jim likes big-ass goals, we call him. He's the big-ass goal guy. And he thinks we should have 10 1,000-acre woodland assemblages, ultimately oak woodland assemblages. And I say, have at it. He also has a goal of, what do we say, eradicating buckthorn. Let's hear it for him. So this is the work we need to do, and we need to pull all of our efforts together to develop good bird assemblages, grassland assemblages, to work on our oaks and our trees, and look at how those all interconnect. And the way we do it is with people on the ground. Joyce Coffey, right here, quoted you. Humanitarian crisis of our time. We have to put a human face on this work that we're doing, and not just the crisis, and not just mitigation, but adaptation and resiliency. How is our region going to look? What's the health of our region going forward? We have people on the ground, thousands of people who help collect the bird data, thousands of people who are cutting buckthorn and working in preserves all over the region, many people now planting stormwater gardens, all kinds of things going on in the region. And it's at every age, from our Leave No Child Inside effort to Mighty Acorns to Conservation at Home and Work to Tree Keepers. There's just so many great programs going on. Jennifer Schwartz from the Botanic Garden is launching something, Conservation in Our Community, is that what it's called? Something like that. And she's doing that with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Wisconsin DNR, a Native American tribe, and a bunch of schools and Alliance for Great Lakes. And they're going out and they're saying, what does climate mean to you? They're building gardens, they're doing a whole range of things. And they're demonstrating what can be done. Water, next. So we talked about that more when we don't need it, less when we do. So when we don't need it, we have these things. These are called deep tunnel thingies, right? That's about the right way to say it, right, David? We can't keep building these. They're expensive, and when they were designed, our region looked different. We didn't expect it would be as big as it was. So how do we handle that water? Sometimes we have to reverse the reverse. Okay, we don't want to do that. We know we reverse the flow of the Chicago River to keep our river clean and all the way down, send that nice plume to the Gulf of Mexico. But sometimes when we have extreme storms, we have to open up the locks and bring our pollution back into the lake. It doesn't happen nearly as much anymore, but we don't want that to happen. So sorry I'm taking your thunder, but I love this so much. The fourth reservoir is what David said. Where's the fourth reservoir? We're not going to build a fourth big, I'll use big ass hole in the region. We just can't. Where does it go? It has to go somewhere. We have to come up with green infrastructure opportunities, permeable paving and things like that. As an example, thank you, Chicago Center for Green Technology, near and dear to many of our hearts from Department of Environment and Department of Transportation, a range of other great departments that are part of this. This site is a stormwater party, let's just say that. So we have permeable paving, we don't have curbs, we have bioswales where the water goes through vegetation and cleans it. Go back. Thank you. In the bottom corner, there's like a sewer hole, and only 20% of the water ends up going there because so much of it goes through the site and gets utilized. All right, now you can keep going. Thank you. And here's a site with MWRD, the public schools. They planted their own rain garden. So there's a lot of activity around this, and we're going to need a lot of those and many other things to make up for that fourth reservoir. Next. So next, business opportunity. So I've learned from Dean about this risky business report, which probably many of you know about. Former Mayor Michael Bloomberg and our own Henry Paulson from Chicago helped bring this group together to take a look at the economic implications in our region. Next slide. And people are asking, is climate actually part of business now? Is it part of our story? Well, we know it needs to be, and we know we're now seeing impacts on energy, on agriculture, et cetera. How can we harness that and turn it into actually productive economic opportunities? And this is what Henry Cisneros says: significantly reduce odds of costly outcomes. So I'm saying significantly reduce costs. Is there an opportunity that investment can be made that's cheaper than our hard infrastructure and still puts people to work? We have it here. We have the research. We have the restoration research. We have tree research. We have biodiversity research. We have climate research. We have risky business. We have a lot of economic data. We don't need to study this to death. We've got a lot of information and a lot that we can act upon. As part of that, we, as Chicago Wilderness, as our alliance, are continuing to work together. We have a range of activities from natural resources management to our communications from children to adults, to that big vision called green infrastructure and knowing what land we have and how it all fits into climate. And there's activities that we're going to undertake to put priorities together, and we hope at the end of this I'll tell you how you can communicate with us further. But before I leave, I got to acknowledge, so I'm going to do that really quickly. First of all, Chicago Wilderness Corporate Council and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service were our main funders for this event tonight, and we thank you very, very much. Next, we have corporate council members who've been engaged with us and have been supporting us, and some of these groups are the ones that have been investing of late. Hay and Associates is up there somewhere, I think, but I wanted to make a shout out for that because Jeff Mangler is here today. He's very active, and I think he's pretty much, Jim and others would say he's pretty much a full-time Chicago Wilderness employee. He does his work too, Vince, wherever you are, really he does. But he contributes so much to what we're doing, and our business community contributes to so much of what we're doing that we couldn't do it without you. West Monroe is another example. Yeah, let's give him. And West Monroe is another example who's doing some great work on our technology needs so we can communicate more across our region and have an active reciprocal communication as we build our strategies together. And we have a lot of other business supporters here today, and we hope to continue to expand our business relationships. Oh, those are the ones I just mentioned. Okay, Midwest Ground Covers, WRD, Hay and Associates, West Monroe have been doing some great things in this past year, and I wanted to give them specific shout outs.